Hello everybody, it is Nicole from iiKiui, and today we are back with another Draw It Again video. I thought I would turn this into a series or a mini-series since many of you wanted to see some of my art from older videos redrawn again. I also really enjoy redrawing older pieces of art because you can see so much improvement as well as learn where you still need to improve. The next one we are redrawing is a video I posted a little over 5 years ago called Cafe Latte. I actually checked the date that I originally created this, and I drew this piece on July 29th, 2015. Had I checked it sooner, I probably would have planned for this video to go out on that date to make it a 5-year anniversary, but nonetheless, it's still 5 years later. This was one of the first videos I posted on my channel back when I was first starting, and I remember the #1 complaint on that video was that there was no music. And my mentality back then, because I was new and didn't know about royalty-free music, was that you could play your own music in another tab and not worry about not liking the music in the video. Of course, with smartphones and tablets, I don't even know if that's possible, so luckily I figured out that I needed to add music or a voiceover as the years went on. So let's not waste any time and hop into the voiceover about the actual art. As with all of my art, I start with a very rough sketch. Most of the time, I don't show my sketching process because it takes a very long time and I get super close to the paper. But for these redrawing videos, I felt like it was only fair to share the sketching portion, especially because the previous video, I showed the process from start to finish. When creating the initial sketch, I mainly focused on blocking out the pose, proportions, shapes, and overall composition. This part is important because once I start adding details, it's really difficult to turn back. It's not impossible, but I do my rough sketch and more refined sketch on the same paper, so if I want to change anything, it's pretty much permanent. I finished the refined sketch off camera because, as I mentioned before, it takes a really long time and I get super close to the paper. Depending on the amount of detail in a piece, finishing the sketch can take a few hours to a couple days, and for this one, I procrastinated quite a bit, so I didn't finish it until a few days later from when I filmed the first sketching part. But in total, I'd say it took about 5 hours or so to complete. I was glad to see a noticeable difference in the old and new art already. I think my style has definitely developed more into a style I personally like, but I know I still have a ways to go in terms of art goals and where I want my style to be. After completing the sketch, I transferred it onto some marker paper with a Prismacolor color erase pencil and light pad. I like transferring my sketches onto a new piece of paper because not only does it let me preserve the original sketch, but in case I do mess up, I can always retrace and retry again. This is something I have done more recently because in the original video, I created the sketch and final art on the same piece of paper. Moving on to the coloring, similar to the last video, I tried to use as many of the same colors and markers in the past video. For this video, I had to find color matches for the Mipixi markers that I used, because I don't have them anymore since many of them dried up. Luckily, I was able to find colors similar within the Arteza marker set, which I'll link down below along with all the other materials I'll be using today. As I started coloring, I had the old art next to me so I could use it as reference for the colors and shading. As usual, I start by shading the skin, using most of the same markers as before, which were actually mostly Copics. In the old art piece, I noticed I didn't put any blush, which was kind of surprising, so I made sure to add some this time around. I actually rewatched the video to see my process back then, and I didn't realize how often I used the colorless blender. Nowadays, I try to stray from using it so often to blend, which I explain in my video on how to blend with markers. Most of the outfit stayed the same, with some exceptions where I took out parts that felt unnecessary. When recreating this skirt, I wanted to make sure it stayed proportionate to each other throughout the entire piece. In the original, some parts of the skirt were very long, such as the front and back, while others were short, like the middle side area. You could say it's perspective, but I think at the angle we are looking at it, it feels more like an asymmetrical skirt, which was definitely not what I was going for. So, as I said earlier, I tried harder this time around to make sure the skirt looked like it was even in perspective. As I'm doing this voiceover, the drawing is already complete, and after taking a bit of a break from the piece, I can already see some areas that need improvement within the skirt. Of course, I do think I was able to execute it better in this version, but perhaps in another 5 years, I'll actually be able to nail it down even better. The coloring definitely took a lot longer than I was expecting. I think it was because there was a lot of little details within the piece that still needed time in order to make the coloring even. I know in the past, I used to focus on adding lots of details, and this was something I really had to force myself to do. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I'm pretty terrible when it comes to designing clothes and adding details. I tend to lean on the side of simplicity, so even if you look at my Instagram page, a lot of the clothes are pretty simple shapes, but the details are added in the coloring or texture of the materials. Nonetheless, it was still fun to have all the little details within this piece, and I really like what it adds to the overall outfit. One thing I noticed when re-watching the old video was that I didn't take a lot of time when coloring to make the layers smooth. I relied a lot on the colorless blender to do the blending for me, and I was still new to markers back then, so it's definitely understandable, but now that I have a few years under my belt, I'm glad I'm able to make the newer version a lot cleaner and streak-free. I have a video on my channel that covers how I color smoothly with marker, so if you want to check that out, it will be in the description and in the card. One thing I noticed a little before completing the drawing was that I made everything on the platter extremely small. I didn't realize it when drawing and coloring it, but compared to her hand, the drinks, fork, and cake are either made for children or very miniature people. With that being said, there's always room for improvement, and maybe next time I decide to redraw this, I'll make the items more proportionate to her. I mean, can you imagine using a tiny fork the size of your pinky finger? As I got near the end of the coloring, I was really like how it was turning out. Because my current process involves coloring before outlining, opposite from before, I think it gave the whole piece a very soft look. It also allows me to see where I need to add more contrast because if I can see the form and shape of each piece without the line art, then I know I was able to successfully define the form. Of course, adding the line art does add some definitive lines to it and makes it a bit more graphic in style. I personally like a mix of both styles where the outline is colored. I think it helps keep the soft feeling but allows for definitive lines. At the end, I added some final touches to this piece, such as adding light shadows with colored pencils and adding the final highlights with a white gel pen. I do miss the purple background, but I decided to leave it out this time and just focus on the character. Overall, I really like how she turned out, but as always, I can still see mistakes. There are a few things that I would still fix, but we can save that for the next redraw of this character. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it entertaining, inspiring, or even motivating. If you like this video and want to see more like this, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you're notified of when I post a new video, which is every Wednesday. And if you want to see more redrawing videos like this, let me know in the comments if you want to see a certain video redrawn. I have a few suggestions already written down, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. Keep drawing, keep creating, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!